You had indicated that with respect to S8T and you, the master list of the roster, you said you would get that in advance of the day that you were listed to work?
Yes, sir.
All right. Were you listed to be the supervisor on June the 3rd of 2014?
Yes, I was.
And I'm going to ask you to specifically refer to, well, strike that. When you would get that list in advance, what would you do?
I usually got the night before, and I would just take a quick look at it, see what my assignment was. That's all I would do with it once I got it. Once I came to work, is that what you mean, sir?
Yeah, once you came to work.
Once I came to work, I would just look at the different locations and take a call from the precinct and start making the rounds.
Okay. Was it your understanding that you were required to visit each one of the posts that you were assigned to?
Was my understanding, yes.
And was that whether they were covered or not on the sheet that you got?
Judge,
Yes.
I'm just going to object to the leading nature of those questions. We're at a critical area. Just ask questions.
I'll rephrase it. Based upon S8T, right, which you've got, did you, when you got the list, you reviewed your list on S8T, what was your expectation with respect to whether you're going to see anybody at the Hudson Mall jug handle?
My expectation, well, on the list here, it's uncovered, but that tended to change. That's why, answering your other question, you have to always go and check, make sure the guy's there, because this is kind of like a rough list that changes not only day to day, but hour to hour.
So you would go to the post whether it was covered or not?
Correct.
Whether it was listed as covered or not?
Correct.
And now specifically with respect to the Hudson Mall jug handle, I'm referencing S8B. Based upon the paperwork, did you see anybody at the Hudson Mall jug handle that day?
S8B, sir?
Yeah.
No, I did not.
And then based upon S8T, who would you have expected to see at 18th and Marin?
I would have expected to see M. Rodriguez.
Okay.
Officer M. Rodriguez.
And based upon your patrol sheet, who did you see at 18th and Marin?
Officer M. Rodriguez.
Now, 18th and Marin, is it one-man post or a two-man post? One-person post or a two-person post?
It's a two-person post.
Did you make any notations with respect to that second post on either your patrol sheet or your pay voucher?
No, I did not.
Can you explain for the court why there were no notations there?
No, I can't explain it.
Was that your practice?
On this day, I just wrote down the one officer I saw there.
And who did you see there that day?
Officer M. Rodriguez.
And again, how do you know that?
I have it here on my patrol sheet.
Okay. I want to ask you to look through and make reference specifically to S8E. What is S8E in evidence?
This is an off-duty voucher submitted by Officer Michael Rodriguez for working June 3rd, 2014, from 3 to 7 at 18th and Marin.
Okay. And there's a detailed project name printed there. Is that correct?
Yes, it's the DOT Skyway detail.
Is that your handwriting? Where it says detailed project name DOT Skyway?
That's not my handwriting.
Okay. Would it be your responsibility to fill that in? That area in? Specifically the detailed project name?
That's not my responsibility. It's my when I sign that, my signature's just under it. It's my responsibility to make sure that that's on there, the detail that the officer's working. But for me to physically write it in, no, it's not.
No, not your responsibility. It's the responsibility of the officer?
Yes.
And that you said that an SAE, that is your signature on there?
Yes, it is.
And based upon the master sheet, with respect to Route 139 in Tunnel, who would you expect to see at Route 139 in Tunnel?
According to the master sheet, the officers scheduled to work at Route 139 in Tunnelly would be R. Lopez and C. Matias.
Now, according to your patrol activity sheet, who did you see at 139 in Tunnel?
I saw Tunnelly 139, C. Matias and Officer Alvarado.
Do you know Officer C. Matias?
Yes, I do.
Matias? How do you know him?
Just from work.
Just from work?
Yes.
And do you know Officer M. Alvarado?
I'm not sure. There's so many new officers these days, so
Okay. I'm going to specifically ask you to look at S8L and S8M. First, with respect to S8F, is there an officer's name on that?
yes, it's Officer Monique Alvarado.
Seeing her first name,
Now I know who she is, yes.
okay. And is that your signature under the foreman authorized agent?
Yes, it is.
And can I ask you, Captain, why you would sign it? Why did you sign it under foreman authorized agent?
My understanding that was the responsibility of the supervisor working the detail. We had to sign the sheets in order for the officers to get paid.
And that is your signature on S8M?
Yes, it is.
And on that, the detail project name is listed as NJ DOT Skyway?
Yes, it is.
And it's 1 and 9 in total?
That's correct.
And with respect to S8L, we're just going to sort of expedite this a little bit. Is that your signature there?
Yes, it is.
And again, you know Officer Mateus?
Yes, I do.
Based upon these pay vouchers and your patrol sheet, where on June 3rd of 2014, where would you have affixed your signature to Officer Mateus and Officer Alvarado's pay vouchers? Physically, where would you have been located when you affixed your signature?
At the location here, Tunneling 130.
And with respect to the SAT, who would you have expected to see at 1 and 9 in Broadway?
On Broadway, it'll be Officers Bushker and Doyle.
According to your patrol sheet, who did you see at 1 and 9 in Broadway?
Officers Bushker and Doyle.
You're making reference to S8G and S8F. Whose pay vouchers are those?
One for Officer Doyle and one for Officer Bushker.
And for what location? Locations on both of them?
Location was the same for both Broadway and Route 109.
And those are your signatures?
Yes.
Thank you. With respect to Newark and 1 and 9, according to SAT, who did you expect to see there?
Newark and 109, the officers assigned to it were Officers Captain and Ruskowski.
Okay. And according to your patrol sheet, who did you see at Newark and 1 and 9?
The same officers, Captain and Ruskowski.
And if you would just make reference to S8J and S8K. SHA first. What is that?
It's an off-duty voucher for Officer David Calvin for working same date and time, Route 1 and 9 in Newark Avenue.
And that's your signature?
Yes, it is.
And S8K?
This is Officer Riskowski's voucher for working same date and time at Newark and 1 and 9.
And those are consistent with your patrol sheet?
Yes, sir.
Now, with respect to the post at SIPN 109, according to the S18, the roster, who did you expect to see at SIPN 109?
Mitch Schneck, Officer Mitch, Lieutenant, I believe, Mitch Schneck.
Do you know Lieutenant Mitchell?
Yes, I did.
And how well do you know Lieutenant Mitchell?
Well,
According to your patrol sheet, who did you see at SIPN 109?
according to my patrol sheet, I saw Officer Bove Jr. at SIPN 109.
If you just look at S8H, what is S8H?
It's an off-duty voucher submitted by Officer Giovanni Bove for the date in question, the time, DOT Skyway detail working at SIPN 109.
All right. Do you know Officer Bo?
Yes, I do.
How well do you know Officer Bo?
Pretty good.
All right. Do you have, let me ask you specifically, and I'm going to testify, but I'm going to ask you again. Do you have an independent recollection of supervising Officer Bove on June 3rd of 2014?
No, I didn't.
All right. Do you have an independent recollection of ever being a supervisor and seeing Officer Bove work a off-duty detail?
I know I've seen him working, but one particular specific detail? No.
And do you have any specific recollection of seeing him work at Skyway detail?
No.
No. And is that your signature on S8H? I think I asked you.
Yes, it is my signature.
And is that consistent with your patrol sheet?
Yes, it is.
All right. And so according to S8T, you expected to see Schnee and one post blank?
Well, I knew there may be somebody there, but the sheet I have said it may be blank, but again, this is just a rough guide. Sometimes these blanks were filled, sometimes they weren't. It's very fluid, the way these jobs are filled.
And let me ask you this, with respect to the, and according to, before we get into just a couple questions at a time, according to S8T, did you expect to see anybody at Duncan in 1 and 9?
They're both blank, so I didn't expect to see a particular officer there.
Okay. Did you, according to your patrol sheet, did you go to Duncan in 1 and 9 that day?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And when you got to Duncan 9, according to your patrol sheet, who did you see?
So Officer Torrey.
If you could just make reference to S8I. What is S8I?
This is Officer Joseph Torrey's off-duty voucher for working date in question, time in question, DOT Skyway detail, location was Duncan and Route 1 and 9.
So, Captain, in terms of your responsibility as a supervisor, how long was your shift?
It's a 4-hour detail.
How long were you required to be supervising to earn the 4 hours of pay?
4 hours.
What would you do for those 4 hours?
Monitor the posts, go make sure, like I said earlier, make sure the officers were on post in uniform, wearing their traffic vests, make sure they were doing their job, specifically facilitating orderly flow of traffic.
Okay. Now, according to your patrol sheet, S8B, you booked the first officer on your patrol sheet at 15:30, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And what time did you, according to your patrol sheet, book the last officers at tunneling 139?
At 5:20.
All right. And so, what is that, from 3:30 to 5:20?
Yes, sir.
All right, so that's almost 2 hours?
Yes, sir.
Is it almost 2 hour period?
Yes, sir.
Explain for the court how you would, how and when you would fill in these times.
How would I fill in? I just have a blank scrap paper, just write down, just jot down 1530 Rodriguez. This way when I fill out, I'd sit down at the end of the tour, fill out a sheet and do it in a neat, as neat as my handwriting is, manner.
And as a, during this 2-hour period, this covers 2 hours of the 4-hour period of time that you were supervising on that day? Is that correct? What did you do the other 2 hours?
Objection, Judge, I think this is already asked, and he has no independent recollection of what he did that day. He can't answer what he did on the other 2 hours.
Generally, not with,
If you know, if you recall, what you did on the
Well,
other.
the detail started at 3. I was going to the precinct, get a radio call, and my first booking here is 18th and Marin, which is all the way down one side of the city. So from 3 to 3:30, that's where I did my first half hour, just getting down there to see Officer Rodriguez. So that covers that half hour. So now we're talking 2.5 hours. Then the last hour and a half, I would just, this specific day, I don't know what I did. I can't answer.
do you, in general, what was your understanding of your responsibility during the, as a supervisor?
Just to make sure traffic was kept flowing. So what I would do on a normal day, like I still do today, is even though I booked together, just drive around, make sure traffic's moving along. And if it needed to be, I could reassign an officer, different location, things of that nature.
Do you have any independent recollection of seeing your friend Mike O'Neill ever working at DOT detail? Do you recall ever seeing him work at DOT detail?
No.
Do you recall ever being contacted by Mike O'Neill with respect to a DOT detail that he was working?
No.
Do you recall ever having any contact with Captain Astley's at all with respect to DOT details that you were working as a supervisor?
I don't recall. I don't recall.
What does it mean to you and your understanding of your obligations and responsibilities as a supervisor? What does it mean to you to book an officer in at a location?
Make sure the officer's there, make sure the officer's in full uniform, with traffic vest, make sure they're doing their job.
If you could just refer to S8D. What is S8D?
SAT is an off-duty voucher submitted by Officer O'Neill on June 3rd, 2014.
Are you familiar with Officer O'Neill's writing?
No, I'm not.
Okay. So it's just based on this paperwork that you're saying it's Officer O'Neill?
Correct.
All right. Is this pay voucher in evidence S8D? Is this for a post that you were scheduled to supervise?
Yes, it is.
Is that your signature on the form and authorized agent?
No, it's not.
All right. Were you ever contacted by Captain Astley's with respect to a detail that Mike O'Neill was working?
No, not that I remember.
Your Honor, that's all I have for Captain.
Cross-examination, Mr.
Thank you. Captain, I represent Mike O'Neill. Do you recall giving a statement in this matter?
Yes, sir.
And I believe you went to the prosecutor's office. Was questioned.
Make sure I have
On January 21st, 2016. Does that ring a bell?
The date, no, sir.
All right, let me back up. You recall talking to someone from the prosecutor's office about this matter before these questions today?
Yes, sir.
Okay, how many times?
3 times.
3. When was the first time? Generally speaking, in terms of, not the exact date, but, let's do the last time, that should be easier to remember. Not the exact date, but generally, when was the last time you spoke?
It was either late August or early September of this year.
Okay, who'd you speak to?
Prosecutor Stone.
Mr. Stone, anybody else present?
At that time, no, sir.
Okay. Prior to then, who did you, and did you understand you were preparing your testimony at that time?
Yes, sir.
Okay, prior to then, you said it was a 3 occasions, what was the other time?
It was either in late February or early March of this year, 2018.
Doing what?
Going over my initial statement that I'd given a couple years back.
I got it, okay. Who was present?
Prosecutor Stomer and investigator Signorelli.
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 Okay, so late August, early September of this year, 2018, and then you believe sometime around February of this year.
Late February, early March. Yes.
Okay, February, March of this year. And you said you went over a statement that you gave back in, I'll proffer to you, I have a statement here that says January 21st, 2016. Any reason to disbelieve that date?
No reason to disbelieve it.
Does that sound about right, about 2+ years ago now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And did you travel to the prosecutor's office?
Yes, sir.
And you remember who was there then?
The initial statement, sir?
The statement in January, I'll proffer to you that it says January 21st, 2016. You remember who was present then?
Yes, sir.
Who?
Sergeant Signorelli, and from our internal affairs unit, I don't know if it's Sergeant or Lieutenant Joshua.
Joshua.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Now, do you recall advising them that you went to these posts one time during your tour?
Yes, sir.
And was that your normal protocol?
Normal protocol? Yes, sir.
You went through these, you went to each location as part of your supervisory duties one time when you were supervising these DOT details, correct?
The 4-hour details, yes, sir.
Okay. And if we look at the sheet you were showing me, Mr. Showman, your patrol log from today, 8B, I believe. It's got you going to various posts, looks like one time, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, to be clear, you said this was Stone, but as you sit here now, well, let me try it this way. I'm just going to turn your log over. You would agree with me that you couldn't sit here now and have an independent recollection of who you saw at what location, where, and when back in June of 2014, correct?
I agree with you, yes, sir.
You're a police officer. You need records, you need documents to assist you in that process, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that's what you were shown here? That's what you were shown back in January of 2016? You were shown documents, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, you said that you received, well, let me back up a second. Was there any particular training about the DOT jobs?
Particular training?
Yeah.
No, sir.
Were there any rules, regulations, SOPs, anything that were given saying this is what's expected by the officers and the supervisors related to the DOT?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. So you went out there and you did what you thought you had to do, correct?
Correct.
Based upon what you thought the system was, correct?
Correct.
And you signed by the vendor, supervisor part on these payrolls, because that's where you thought your signature was supposed to go, correct?
Correct.
Someone else may have signed down at the note section, maybe that's what they thought, correct?
Correct.
But there were no rules or regs that said where you're supposed to sign, what you're supposed to do.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. You said you received what is in front of you there, we call it a master list, a roster, a pre-typed list. Is it 8T?
Yes, sir.
8T and the next one, TU. U is the next one, right? Next page there? Okay. And then you said you received that sometime before you went out, correct?
Usually the night before.
How did you receive it?
Through phone, text message.
Phone and text message. So, someone took a picture of something
Correct.
with their cell phone and then forwarded it to you.
That's correct.
Who would it normally be?
Lieutenant Goldberg.
Okay. And on that sheet are one-man posts and two-man posts, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, one-man post, someone's got to go to the intersection and try and move traffic around, correct?
Correct.
On a two-man post, who stands where?
Who stands where?
Sure, you got two officers on a two-man post. Who was supposed to stand where on the two-man post?
Yes, whatever the officers would stand, whatever position they thought they could best move the traffic along.
It was left to them on a two-man post to figure out where to go, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And so whoever put this, you don't know who put this list together and who set up this strategy here for how traffic was going to be handled by these 52 officers in the morning and 52 officers at night, do you?
No, sir.
But they made a determination, some posts were one-man posts and some posts were two-man posts, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you said this sheet moved, that's right, it changed frequently, sometimes hourly, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now,
For purposes of the record and message.
I apologize, I'm on 8T. 8T, the master log, right?
Yeah.
That changed and moved hourly, correct?
They could have, yes, sir.
Well, that was your experience, correct?
Yes.
I mean, and I'll go over it with you, we've established that there were several officers that you did not expect to see based upon the questioning of the prosecutor that you wound up seeing, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. But you didn't have anything to do with putting the master list together, correct?
No, I did not.
You did, however, get it, and then that would be your guide, at least an outline, for how you would go about your supervisory duties, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, may I stand here?
Yes, you may.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Yes.
Thank you. This has you working, S8T has you working the 15 to 1900 tour as the supervisor at the North District, they're calling it, correct?
Yes, sir.
And to be clear, when it says North District, you said that it was one part of the city, the other part of the city. You got South District, East District. Are all these locations within the normal districts of the city, the way the city's broken out?
You mean our normal patrol
Yeah, you have,
functions?
to be clear, you have north, south, east, and west in Jersey City, correct?
Correct.
And it breaks out on some geography, and I understand growing up in Jersey City in the north was up there in Hutton and Central. You had precincts in each geographic zone, right?
Yes, sir.
And you had a geographic location for that, correct?
Yes, sir.
Do these districts break out the way you would expect them to break out in, do these districts break out the same way that the city breaks out the districts for normal patrol duties?
No, they did not.
They do not, okay. So these districts are called north, south, east, and west, but they're different than even what north, south, east, and west means in a normal patrol thing, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And you indicated that on this particular thing, I think you said Hudson Wall jug handle is different, is in a different, that's one side of the city, and then you gotta roll all the way up to these other locations, right? Now, you told us that some of the people you expected to see, you would see based upon the patrol log, and some you didn't see, right?
Yes, sir.
And you put that on your patrol, and on your patrol log you wrote who you saw, and on this you wrote, you didn't write anything on this.
Right, I didn't
Not-
write anything on that.
Not on AT. Okay. I'm mad? So, okay. Now, you have, by the way, you were shown the O'Neill voucher, and that's an evidence. It says Michael O'Neill. You said you didn't know his writing, but it appears to be a voucher. Michael O'Neill filled out. Michael O'Neill, Skyway Detail, 1 and 9, Sitman Avenue, signed by what appears to be Joe Askins, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. And he lists 1 and 9 in SIP, correct?
Yes, sir.
And if you look at 1 and 9 in SIP on here, there was a schneid that was, at least on this record, anticipated to be there, correct?
Yes, sir.
You would have expected based upon this, correct?
Yes, sir.
You had other open posts if you wanted to do something nefarious. You had other open posts where you didn't expect anybody to be, correct? Yeah, Duncan was open on this and Jug Handle was open, correct?
Yes, sir.
But Schneid, there was somebody already scheduled to 1 and 9 and SIP, correct?
That's correct.
Now, on your log, you list both at 1 and 9 and SIP in the 4th entry at 16:20, that's 4:20 p.m., correct?
Correct.
Bove Jr., SIP in 1 and 9, NJDOT Skyway 11, correct?
Correct.
Now, why'd you put Skyway 11 there?
On the master roster here, the different locations, they have an assigned call sign. So the call sign for SIP and 1 and 9 would be Skyway 11.
But it would also be Skyway 10, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, it's a two-man post, and it says both 10 and 11, correct?
Correct.
And we can agree, even from your experience, a two-man post, if the two officers came down there, you know, they wouldn't stand there holding hands or take turns. They would go out there and use the two-man and the manpower to turn around and try and accomplish whatever out to be accomplished out there to direct traffic, correct?
Yes, sir.
That was the expectation, I guess, right?
Yes.
At least that was what your expectation was.
That was mine.
Okay. So 10 and 11 were not different corners of the two-man post. It was just the two-man post had to go there and they had to work that out and figure out how to best direct traffic, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, interestingly, if we look at this 8T, jug handle is empty, correct?
Correct.
And then Marin Skyway 2, Sky 02 has Castillo, correct?
This is the daytime, so that's...
I'm going over, oh, I apologize. You're right, thank you. 8th and Marin, on yours, M. Rodriguez is on 2, correct?
Yes, sir.
And 3 is empty, correct?
Correct.
Now, it would make sense to you that if you had one man per two-man post, you would put the first person in the first post on that, right?
Would it make sense?
Yeah.
I think it doesn't make sense to do it either way, just as long as the number is attached to the post.
Well, when you say it doesn't make sense to make it either way, here, whoever put this list together put Rodriguez at number 2, correct?
Correct.
And number 3 was left blank, correct?
Correct.
And it was a two-man post, correct?
Correct.
But on 1 and 9 and SIP, whoever put the list together, it's a two-man post, and it indicated they got to get there and work together and cooperate and figure it out. 10 is left blank on this sheet, correct?
That's correct.
And someone puts number 11, Schnee, in for number 11, correct?
Correct.
As you sit here now, and by the way, O'Neill's post at least says 1 and 9 and SIP, right?
Yes, it does.
Okay. As you sit here now, do you know what moves or changes were made where someone was taken off that and put on another post, put on a mobile detail or anything like that?
No, sir.
You don't. But the form clearly has 2 different processes on it. One where if there's one guy on a two-man post, they put him in the first one chronology, and then, at least according to this form, down below, the two-man post, they pick the second number, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And as you sit here now, you have no idea if somebody, like Michael Neal's name was in there and then taken off because he was moved, put around, put mobile or anything, correct?
I have no idea.
Because this changed hourly and you weren't aware of what transpired, correct?
Correct.
And you would have no knowledge or information as to what communications Joe Ascalise had with whoever put this together. You wouldn't know that, right?
Yes, sir.
You would have no idea as to what was transpiring, what the needs were on a daily basis based upon citywide traffic issues, correct?
Correct.
No idea as to what calls were being made, what businesses were calling, what politicians were calling about traffic, no idea, right?
No, sir.
But you understand Ascalise was in charge of this detail.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so you can't offer any testimony as to why, even on this form, on this day in question, 2 different systems are used. One where one guy shows up for a two-man post, the first post is chosen, and one where one guy shows up for a two-man post and the second post is chosen, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, let's talk about what you can tell us about this. Even this Skyway detail log, 8T, the master log, did not meet your expectations as to who you were going to run into, correct?
Correct.
Because at 1 and 9 in Tunnelly, you didn't find Lopez. At least not in Skyway 4, correct?
Correct.
You found who?
Found Alvarado.
Alvarado. So, unbeknownst to you, some more moves or changes were made to this form by the time you got there, correct?
Correct.
And at 1 and 9 in SIP, you didn't, in the second 1 and 9 SIP post, number 11, you didn't find Schnee, correct?
Correct.
you found, on 109 and SIP, you found both.
Yes, sir.
Another change that you were not expecting, correct?
Correct.
And on Duncan at 1 and 9, you don't expect anybody on a log, but you find somebody on, when you get to the post, correct?
Correct.
Who was that?
Officer Tory.
Tory? Okay, so even this master log on the day in question that you were called in to testify has got 3 unexpected changes to the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 names that were in there, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and that is your recollection that this system just changed daily, hourly, you said,
Yes, sir.
correct? Hourly. And it wasn't, did you understand that the job here was to be wet to paperwork, or did you understand the job was to try and alleviate traffic based upon this huge project being conducted, this Skyway detail?
To alleviate traffic.
Okay. All right. You were asked on direct, on this particular day, you did not list empty posts, correct?
Correct.
But on if I may, your pay voucher 8A, you have a section of notes here, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you do list empty posts on there, correct?
On the notes section, it looks like I listed all the posts I was assigned to check for this detail.
Okay. So your system was that, at least on this day, was that on this particular day, you listed on your pay voucher the 7 different intersections, correct?
Correct.
Because some intersections got 2 posts, we'll just call them intersections, right?
Okay.
So your process was, at least on this particular day, was to list 7 different intersections on your pay voucher, correct?
Correct.
But then we get to S8B, and here you have a time, a name of an officer, an intersection called work location, and the detail, which just basically corresponds to a number from this S8T, correct?
Correct.
All right. Now, 1530 is 3:30, correct?
Correct.
And I think you described that you would get up, go to the, get up. You would, let's hope you're not getting up at 3 o'clock, or maybe you are, I don't know. You would get to your precinct, you would get a car, a radio, whatever else was required, right?
Correct.
And then you would start the process of going around and going back and forth. And the first contact you have is 15:30, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, this sheet is nice and neat. From my perspective, I'm going to tell you it's nice and neat, it's put together, and I read your statement. You didn't write this as you were doing it, did you?
No, it did not.
Okay, so this sheet was not actually contemporaneously written, correct?
Correct.
You did not write in that log that at 15:30 you visited a particular intersection, correct?
Correct.
You actually, and there was no rule or regulation about when you had to do it contemporaneously or not, correct?
Correct.
All right. So what you actually did was, you went from either notes or memory, and then you created this log after the fact, correct?
From notes, sir.
Notes, you kept notes, and then you would put the log together afterwards, correct?
Correct.
I think in testimony, you recall telling me in the statement, you tried to make it neat, you just did it later to keep it neat and so on?
Yes, sir.
That's why I was coming from being neat, that's what you said in the statement, and some of the ones we've seen, it's very neat. The fact of the matter is that then what you come in here and testify to is not actually contemporaneously what you observed by way of any notes, correct?
Correct.
And we're counting on, hopefully, and I say hopefully, I'm not making any accusations or any allegations at all, but you've come in to testify something that's actually a report from Black River Border Patrol log that you recreated based upon whatever notes you had, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And those notes obviously are governed.
Yes, sir.
All right. And on there, you have times that you went to the various locations, correct?
Correct.
When did you go to the Hudson Mall Junket?
I didn't list it on my sheet, sir.
Therefore, because it's not listed on your sheet, we have nothing, because you don't have any independent recollection that tells us on that particular day you went there, other than what you think is your system that you put together, right?
Correct.
Okay. So as you sit here now, you cannot even tell the court, because you have no independent recollection, that you actually visited the junk handle that day, right?
I didn't note it on my sheet, so to answer
Okay.
your question, no, I can't say that.
Very good. That's all. Thank you. I'm not done yet, but thank you for just telling us as it. And to be clear, you were asked questions about the relationship you have with O'Neill, and you testified about that truthfully, correct?
Oh, yes, sir.
And you're testifying truthfully here today as best as you can based upon what's in your notes, correct?
Yes, sir.
But in terms of looking at O'Neill's pay voucher, which you have there, the 109 SIP pay voucher, right? The only thing you can tell this court is that his name does not appear on your patrol log, correct?
Correct.
Okay. You cannot tell anything about where else he may have been, correct?
Correct.
You don't know anything about where he may have been assigned by Ashley's, correct?
Correct.
You don't even know if he was in the original number 10 and then pulled out and sent somewhere else, correct?
Correct.
As you take a look at what we marked as D84, and we'll go through this page by page. Do you recognize the name Trident, Villanueva?
Yes, I do.
Is that a police officer in Jersey City?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Now, I'll proffer to you, we received all of this discovery in advance of trial, and this appears to us to be Trident Villanueva's police voucher, off-duty payment voucher for the 23rd of April 2014. See that?
Yes, sir.
You see your signature on there?
Yes, I do.
All right. And you see where it says 109 in Duncan?
Yes.
Okay. So, you wouldn't have an independent recollection of this, but just looking at this sheet, this first sheet of this document, it appears to you that you provided, you signed a copy of his off-duty pay voucher related to this Trident mail, if you know.
Is it now?
Mail. Trident Villanueva's off-duty pay voucher, 4/23/2014, 6 to 10 a.m., and you have it signed, right?
Yes, sir.
At 109 in Duncan, correct?
Correct.
And the next page. Do you recognize a Julio C. Galindo?
Yes, I do.
Okay, who's that? Police officer?
Yes, yes.
Now that's April 23rd, 2014, 6 to 10 a.m. at DOT Skyway Project, Duncan and 109. Whose signature is that, do you know?
No, I do not.
It's not yours, right?
It's not mine.
But if we look here, on the next page, supervisor's activity sheet, there's a Michael DeSanto. He doesn't have times on his off-duty activity sheet. You know who DeSanto is?
Yes, I do.
Who's that?
He's a police captain.
Police captain, okay? And he's got Villanueva and Galinda working at 109 in Duncan, down there at the bottom, correct?
Yes, he does.
So you wouldn't have even been supervising that day, according to this document, correct?
According to,
The third page, the patrol log of,
I'm sorry, can you repeat your question? please?
sure. According to the third page of this document, the Santos patrol log, you would not have even been working that day, correct?
Well, how would he know? I'm not trying to be wise here, but how would he know if I'm working? The question you asked me, I'm not sure.
You're right, it's a terrible question, and I apologize. The patrol log for 1 and 9 and Duncan that we've looked at for both Villanueva and Galindo appears to be, if you look at line 9, he's got two individuals down there, they're both on the same line, and he's got them at 1 and 9 in Duncan, Skyway DOT, right?
Yes,
Okay,
Santo does have.
The Santo does have that, and he's got 4/23/14, correct?
Yes, he does.
Now, does that look to you to be a scenario where, at least by the paperwork we have, these two officers were working at 1 and 9 in Duncan on 4/23, April 23rd, and the Santo was the supervisor there? Does that appear to you to be?
Appears that way.
All right, well, let's look at the last page of this, which is, last two pages, which is the Pulaski Skyway detail. Jersey City Police Department, plastic highway detail. See that?
Yes, sir.
It's got DeSanto working as a supervisor. It's got Villanueva and Galindo listed in the morning, 6 to 10. It's got DeSanto as a supervisor there, right?
Yes, it does.
And you're not even listed as a supervisor on this day at all, correct?
That's correct.
All right. And just for completeness sake, we have the off-duty payroll records. It's the 4th page in here. And it goes in alphabetical order. And you see, when we get to 423, about 2/3 of the way down the sheet, there's an Ackerley, and the next one is Sean Broderick, the next one's Corso, correct?
Fortunately, I see Ackerley, Broderick, and then Corso. Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
And then if you look, just above you, 422, it's got a series of dates, and all those are in alphabetical order, correct?
Correct.
So this doesn't even have you working that day, right?
Correct.
Any idea how your signature appears on a voucher for a day where you weren't scheduled as a supervisor, don't appear to have worked as a supervisor?
Any idea?
Well, I'll withdraw that. You have no independent recollection of signing that, correct?
Correct.
That's your signature, correct?
Yes, it is.
So on this particular day, there's a voucher with your signature for a day you didn't even work, correct?
Correct.
Okay. You weren't committing a fraud or doing anything criminal at that time, right?
No, sir.
No, right? Okay, you can't explain why the paperwork doesn't seem to jive, but there must be some rational reason for it, correct?
I certainly hope so.
You would not know of a reason not rational, not correct with regard to that, right?
Correct.
Okay. We're going to D85. Now, this is Mr. Villanueva again. See him, D85, the first page?
Yes, sir.
And appears to be working April 25th, 2014, from 1,500 to 1,900 hours, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, I will proffer to you, if you look at 425, you look at the last page of this document. You see where it says the first of that North District? It's got Lieutenant Brown in there as the supervisor, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, we have a scenario here where, is that your signature on that first page, Villanueva?
No, it is not.
Okay. And it's got you listed as working that day, correct?
Correct.
And I'll let you know, we couldn't find a pay voucher for you. I'm sorry, a patrol log for you. But as you sit here now, and if you look at the second page, there's a Brian Sullivan. See that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Now, at Duncan and 109, excuse me one second. I apologize. As you sit here now, do you have any knowledge or information as to why an assignment you were apparently on, at least on this master, has someone else's signature on a post that, I mean, Villanueva's in there for you to be supervised, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And again, we don't have any log from you at that occasion. Did you keep logs all the time?
Whenever I worked in detail, I did a patrol shoot.
You did a patrol sheet. Okay. Well, do you have any rationale as to why you would not be on, someone else would have a signature on something you were supposed to be supervising that day?
I can't explain that to you.
Okay. D86. And to confirm, D86 has you working, this is an off-duty supervisor's employment. I just want to make sure we're on the same page here. It's got you paid, if you look down here, from 7 to 3, you work some off-duty job, right?
Yes, sir.
And then it's got you specifically to 3 to 7 p.m. you got paid, correct?
For the 25th of April.
Yes.
sir.
And that comports with the master in 85 that you worked that day, correct?
Correct.
And we have Villanueva that is signed by someone else, although he'd be on your post, correct?
Correct.
All right, and so sitting here now, a lot of paperwork, a lot of people moving around, people moving from post to post. In fact, just to be clear, if you look at the second page of 85, it's got Brian Sullivan's off-duty patrol log, and he talks about some post reassigned by Lieutenant Chester. See that?
I see that.
And she was the XO for Captain Askins, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so people moving around, reassigned, a lot of changes, things changing fluidly on some of these forms hour to hour. It looks to you that you worked that day, but you just can't explain why someone on your supervisory detail is signed off by someone else, right?
I can't explain it.
Okay. Just an anomaly in the paperwork?
Apparently so.
Okay.
It was the patrol log, and it's the one for Brian Sullivan for 4/25/14, correct?
Yes,
And Mr. Sciarra just asked you some questions about the notes where it says some posts reassigned Lieutenant Chesler, correct?
Yes.
And it says some posts not filled, correct?
Correct.
Now, if you look at the master list that's in that one, towards the end, it doesn't appear that Lieutenant Chesler was assigned as a district supervisor on that sheet, correct?
Correct.
But if, based upon what we see here, apparently Brian Sullivan had listed her as moving people, although not necessarily indicating who was moved, correct?
Correct.
Now, is it your understanding, based upon your testimony at direct examination, that Lieutenant Chesler, as an executive officer for Captain Ascalese, who was the overall Skyway commander, had the authority to move individuals on posts, even though she wasn't assigned as a district supervisor?
That is my understanding.
And is it your understanding that she would get that authority from Captain Ascalese as her superior officer to do those things?
That is my understanding.
Okay. And Lieutenant Sullivan, or I don't know, is he a lieutenant?
He is now. Yes.
He is, okay, so I got that right. Lieutenant Sullivan didn't note specifically who got moved where in terms of either locations or names of individuals, just simply that Lieutenant Chesler had authorized the movement of various people, correct?
That's what he wrote in the sheet.
Okay. Had you ever heard in your time, if you recall, Lieutenant Chesler over the air, on the radio, reassign people?
Not that I recall.
It wouldn't stand out to you, though, based upon the fact that she would have had authority from Captain Ascalese to potentially do that, as we've seen.
That would not stand out.
Now, you testified that it was your understanding, that you obtained your understanding about how off-duty detail worked based upon your experience, correct? That there were no memos, there were no general orders, as far as you knew, any SOPs or anything like that, correct? As far as what you needed to do as a district supervisor on any given date?
None that I'm aware of.
Okay. And let me just ask you, how many years you been on?
25.
25. Do you recall if this Skyway detail was the first one that required supervisors to sign off on individual officers at locations?
I don't recall that.
Okay. Do you recall at the beginning of this detail whether in fact supervisors needed to sign off on vouchers for officers in the very beginning?
I don't recall.
Now, you at some point were an assistant PIC coordinator, correct?
Correct.
And is this around the time period, 2014, that you're an assistant PIC coordinator?
Yes, sir.
And who did you assist?
Lieutenant Goldridge.
Okay. So Lieutenant Goldrich was the overall PIC coordinator for the supervisors for the Skyway DOT detail, correct?
Yes, he was.
Okay. And as an assistant, what would you do to assist him?
I mentioned it briefly earlier. Once a month, or sometimes, at this time it was once a month, all supervisors get together in a room, and you have it's an old coffee can basically, and everybody that chooses to work in off-duty detail gets a tag, and everybody's name goes on it. Joe, Bill, whoever. And it goes into the cup, coffee container, shaken up, and the names come out. And I would sit there, Lieutenant Goldridge would pick them, I'd write the names down, Joe came out 1, Bill came out 2, et cetera, down the line. And then the empty list of jobs with the dates that jobs were open would be on the table, and then each individual also would come up and sign his name in, and I would sit there and make sure that there was, people only signing once, not twice, when they're supposed to be. Sometimes I've had issues with that.
Okay.
That's how I assisted.
Okay. And do you recall seeing early on, we're talking about before the Skyway detail started, or when it was just starting, do you recall seeing Captain Askelis at any of those supervisor meetings requesting to obtain work as district supervisor?
No specific recollection of that.
Okay.
I know Joe did work jobs. I know that.
You recalled him work independent of his role as overall Skyway commander. You do recall him working as a district supervisor for a particular district in the beginning?
I know Joe did work jobs, yes.
Okay. And we're saying job, just so the record's
The off-duty
DOT.
jobs, pardon me. Well, no, not just, excuse me, I'm talking in general off-duty jobs.
Okay.
I know Joe did, some guys like to work jobs, and you get to know, some guys don't work any off-duty jobs at all.
Right.
They just come to work, do their 8 hours, and go home. But other people do come in, I say guys, I mean women also, do like to come in and work. And Joe was known to work. Joe was known to work off-duty jobs. I
Okay.
do know that.
All right.
Specific jobs, no, I can't answer for that.
Okay. So let me just ask that again so the record is clear. You don't recall specifically if he ever worked in the capacity that you worked, for example, on June 3rd of 2014, where he was an actual district supervisor for a particular district under the Skyway detail?
Right, I don't recall.
Don't recall. Okay. So when you would do what you did with regard to assisting Lieutenant Goldrich, and he's a captain now?
Yes, Deputy Chief. pardon.
Deputy Chief, okay. When you assisted him, would you be writing on a form that was not typed in like this, SAT, and you would be putting the names next to the district where they were going to work?
Sorry, maybe I didn't explain it properly.
Yeah.
My interactions as the assistant PIC coordinator, I was just the day of the PICs. Once the lists were written, I wasn't writing names on this actual list that we have here, like the master list. I would just have a blank, basically take it as a blank calendar. And on such and such date, Brown was on the 4th. Brown is number 1. And then Smith is number 2,
Right.
etc. And then Lieutenant Goldridge would take it, and then we'd have it all for the month. No jobs were assigned at that point.
Gotcha.
We had a blank list so that if enough, we had a list, and then if enough jobs came in that needed if you needed a supervisor, then Lieutenant Goldridge would go off of that list.
Follow
For
that
instance, yeah, number one person on that list was Brown, and we
Okay.
have one job, so Brown gets it. We have 2 jobs, the next person gets it, and et
Understood.
cetera down the line.
Okay.
I hope that explains.
You did. At any point in time, did Lieutenant Goldrich either take off or take vacation where he asked you to prepare what, not necessarily this one, but something similar to SAT?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, do you recall for how long a period of time that you were doing the work that ultimately resulted in something similar to SAT?
It was a very brief amount of time,
And why was that?
because I didn't want the headache.
Okay. Because it was a lot of work, correct?
Yes, sir.
It was organizing names and making sure they get into the particular slots, correct?
Correct.
And it was typing it up on a computer or laptop somewhere.
And that's where we had the problem. I'm not computer savvy.
And when you say that's where you had the problem, explain that if you could.
when I said it was just too much work to do, this was done on our own time with no benefit to us. And I say us, I said Lieutenant Dave Goldrich and I. And I'm not computer savvy, so I was pulling my hair out, trying to type all these names in and get it out and email where it needs to be emailed. And
Okay.
when it came back from vacation the first time, I said, I'm not doing this anymore.
Okay. So, so you have some personal experience and knowledge of the work that goes into putting together the master list, correct?
Correct.
All right. Now, when you prepared this, let's talk about the time period you were doing it. When you did this, you would have to text it out to the various supervisors who were going to be working in that particular day and that particular shift, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you said that you were getting information would come in, changes would occur almost hourly, correct?
It could be, yes, sir.
All right. So what time generally would you send out as something similar to SAT to the people you were texting to? Generally, what was it, 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night?
Somewhere around there, yeah. Could
Okay.
be. I would try to, for the short amount of period I did it, I'd try to start as soon as I could, 5, 6 o'clock. And it would go until 10
So
o'clock
if
at
we
night.
use this as a particular date, I know you didn't do June 3rd, but if you're using June 3rd, 2014 as the date, on June 2nd of 2014, around 5 or 6 p.m., you would start entering the information into the computer, whatever computer you're using, to create this master, correct?
Correct.
Now, and then approximately when would you send it out, you said?
By the time I got done typing it, which is probably later at night, the way I type.
Okay. And then, so you would have it out to the supervisors prior to midnight. Is that fair to say?
Fair to say, yes, sir.
Okay. But after midnight, is it fair to say changes would occur to that list?
They could, yes.
Okay. Would you be getting up in the morning again and revising this particular list?
The short amount of period of time I did it, no, I would not.
All right. Do you know if Lieutenant Goldrich, after he had sent out the text messages to the various supervisors with their assignment, whether when changes were made in the various districts or, as you said, supervisors who were the last in the chain that could work the posts, if those changes were made in the morning, do you know if Lieutenant Goldrich would then update and change the typewritten?
I don't know that.
Okay. So, do you know what master lists ultimately were obtained by the prosecutor's office for utilization in this particular case?
No, we didn't.
All right. Can you say for certain that S8T, June 3rd of 2014, was the version as it existed when it was texted to you, as opposed to some later version that may have been updated?
I cannot say that for certain.
Okay. Because, if I understand your testimony correctly, your testimony is simply based on this paperwork, and your recollection is based simply on the paperwork of S18, these other documents you looked at, correct?
Correct.
And Lieutenant Goldrich would be the one who would be able to tell us if he made changes to S8T after he texted it, typed them in, and then ultimately that document is what the prosecutor's office got, correct?
As far as I know.
Okay. So, I just want to show you one last thing on S8T. You had testified that when you, based upon the version of S8T that we're looking at here, that 1 and 9 in SIP was assigned to M. Schnee in your district, which was the North District, correct?
Correct.
Now, I think your testimony was when you got there, Bove was there in that location, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Do you recall indicating in your statement that you believe that somehow Mitch Schnee switched with Bove? That you would believe that Mitch Schnee had switched with Bove?
I think what I actually said was, knowing Mitch, he probably got an 8-hour job and took the 8-hour job, not the 4-hour job.
Right. So the version that you got of, or you believe that you got of S8T, which had Mitch Schnee on it, you believe, because you know him, that he probably picked up an 8-hour shift, which was more lucrative than the 4-hour shift.
Yes, sir.
And either he reassigned it to Bove, or Bove just picked it up when it was open, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, do you know when assuming that this SAT went out sometime the night before, which seems to be the practice, you don't know when Mitch Snee either switched with Bo or indicated that he was going to go potentially work another shift and not work the Skyway detail.
I have no knowledge.
Okay. You don't know if Mitch Snee went out over the air or someone went out over the air and said, hey, nobody's doing 1 and 9 at SIP because Snee went off and did something else, an 8-hour shift, and we need to fill it. You don't know if that occurred on that particular date because you have none of that recollection, correct?
Correct.
By the way, back during this time period, were officers allowed to switch amongst themselves with regard to a given post? And what I mean by that is, if Snee said, look, I don't want to work this, he could call Bove or text Bove and say, hey, do you want to cover for me because I got another assignment? Was that permitted back then?
I know it was permitted at some point. When it changed, I don't know, so sure.
Right. Do you recall receiving a text sometime in May of 2017 or receiving any information back in May of 2017 that the Office of Off-Duty Employment was not allowing supervisors to sign any vouchers of an officer not originally signed to a job, that all switches had to go through them?
I don't recall receiving a text about that. I do recall that that was put out there.
Okay. And you recall that, the general time frame being 2017 when that was put out?
The time frame I can't answer.
Okay. Now, I may have asked you this before, and I apologize if I did, but do you recall receiving text messages other than getting the screenshot of the district that you were assigned to on a particular day? Do you recall getting any text messages from Lieutenant Goldridge as to certain requirements that were that he had implemented with regard to payment procedures?
No.
Do you recall at any point in time in April of 2014 where Goldridge put out a text to supervisors indicating that the supervisors needed to make sure that POs got their vouchers signed so they can get paid?
Do I recall Goldridge putting out a text?
Yeah.
No, sir.
All right, Captain, I want to show you this is marked D87 for identification. Okay, and that's good. Take a look at that. Now, do you recall, on or about April 22nd of 2014, ever receiving any text or directive from Lieutenant Goldridge indicating that you as a supervisor would need to make sure you signed all PO vouchers for the Pulaski Skyway detail?
I do not.
So you had indicated that you would, as Mr. Sciarra, when Mr. Sciarra is asking you questions, that you would make sort of notes to yourself and then transcribe them later on into a neater patrol log, correct?
Yes, sir.
Is that just something you did, or were you told that that's how you needed to proceed?
That's just something I do.
Okay. And it's fair to say that when you transposed the times, you did the best you could when you transposed those times onto the patrol log, correct?
Correct.
Now, was your understanding that when you were putting those times on that particular patrol log, that you were testing to the accuracy of the exact time that you were at that post?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And if you had transposed the information incorrectly, the time to that particular log, that would just be simple mistake on your part, correct?
Correct.
And was it your practice to turn your patrol log in with your voucher?
Yes, sir.
All right. And do you know if all officers did that, turned in the patrol log with the voucher?
I don't know that.
Judge, that's all I have.
And if you recall, this is D84, the first page of it is a voucher that appears to have been filled out by Officer Villanueva for April 23rd, 2014, the 6 to 10 a.m. shift for 1 and 9 in Duncan, and you signed that voucher, correct?
Yes, sir.
And if you recall, you were shown the master sheet for that day, and the master sheet did not list you as a supervisor that day, correct?
That is correct.
And Mr. Sciarra had asked you whether or not you might have an explanation for that, and you recall testifying that as you sit here today, you didn't have an explanation for that.
Correct.
Recall that? Do you remember what shift you were working back in April of 2014?
My normal work shift?
Yeah.
I was working evening till
So that would be 2 to 10?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let me show you another document that's in this exhibit. This is the Operations Division Patrol Bureau sheet, and it's dated for April the 23rd, correct?
Correct.
That's the same day that you signed Officer Villanueva's voucher, correct?
Correct.
And it lists you as working that day, correct?
Correct.
And that would be on the evening tour. As you testified, that would have been the 2 to 10 shift, correct?
Correct.
So according to Villanueva's voucher, Villanueva works 6 to 10, and based upon the paperwork, Villanueva could, and Villanueva was supervised, give me 1 second, by DeSanto that day, correct?
Yes.
And based upon the paperwork, what could have happened is that DeSanto didn't get around to Villanueva's post, and then Villanueva came in and asked you to sign the voucher, correct?
That could have happened, yes.
And although that would have not necessarily been technically in accordance with the procedure that the voucher had to be signed at the post, you would have trusted Villanueva enough that if Villanueva said, I work the 6 to 10 a.m. shift, you would sign the voucher.
Yes, I would.
You met with representatives of the prosecutor's office and the Jersey City Police Department 3 different times, correct?
Well, yes, sir. Well, one time Jersey City Police Department was, of the 3 meetings was there, the other 2 Jersey City Police Department was not there. So 3 times the prosecutor's office, once prosecutors and Jersey City at the same time.
And on none of those occasions, it's fair to say, did they ever ask you about this voucher?
That is fair to say.
They did not ask you.
Did not ask me about that.
Just a couple of more questions. Do you recall testifying on, I believe it was direct examination, it might have been on cross, that when you were out supervising, the situations were very fluid? I think that's the word that you used. Do you recall saying that?
I don't recall saying that, but they were.
And what you meant by that was there were things that would happen on tours that you didn't expect, and you had to adapt to them, correct?
Correct.
And as the supervisor, you had it was your job to adapt to those situations, correct?
Yes, sir.
So if you saw a post that was unmanned and there was a lot of traffic on that post, you had the authority to reassign an officer who was working that day on the DOT from one post to cover the other post, correct?
Correct.
And you didn't have to ask anybody permission to do that, correct?
Correct.
And as Skyway Commander, it's fair to say that Joe Ascalise also had the authority to, based upon the needs, the traffic needs at the time, assign officers to cover posts that may need assistance, correct?
Correct.
And like you, he didn't need your permission to do that, correct?
No, sir.
Let me just bring you back to SAT, which is the master for June 3rd. Now, on the last page of that master, you'll see that it lists the total posts, 104, correct?
Correct.
And it lists 12 uncovered posts for the morning tour, correct?
Correct.
And then it lists 7 uncovered posts for the afternoon tour.
Correct.
Now, 5 out of the 7 uncovered posts were in the North District that day, correct?
Correct.
So it's fair to say that if there was a need for assistance that day, it would have been in the North District where you were supervising. Correct? The same district where Officer O'Neill was assigned to work according to the voucher, correct?
Correct.
The voucher that was signed by Joe Ascalise, who had authority to deploy officers as he saw fit as the Skyway Commander, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you, officer. I have nothing further.
84. You were asked, that is your signature on Trident Villanueva's pay voucher?
Yes, it is.
And according to the Operations Division Patrol Bureau, which is attached to D84, that log, what time were you working that day?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what were your responsibilities that day?
I was working as a patrol. I was the, just to make sure, I was the patrol lieutenant that day. So
From at what time?
from 2 to 10, 2 in the afternoon, 10 in the evening.
And I just want to make sure clear, officer, do you have any independent recollection of fixing your signature to Trident Villanueva's pay voucher?
No, I didn't.
According to page 3 of D5 that I have is, or D84, excuse me, there's a patrol activity sheet for Michael DeSanto, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And was DeSanto scheduled to supervise Villanueva that day? According to the roster sheet? It's in the morning.
The roster sheet or is
According-
the patrol log?
According to the roster sheet.
Yes, sir, he was.
Okay. And according to the roster sheet, DeSanto would have expected to see Villanueva and Galindo at Duncan at 1 and 9?
Objections to what the Santa would have expected, Your Honor.
I'm just testifying with respect to the roster sheet that was attached. I'm asking him to answer questions about the roster sheet that was attached to these.
Not that you can answer us what Sergeant DeSanto actually saw. You understand? It's only with
Just-
regards to the roster sheet.
According to the roster sheet, when he got there, Villanueva should have been there.
And according to the patrol sheet of DeSanto that was attached as part of D84, did DeSanto book in Villanueva and Galindo at Duncan at 1 and 9?
Yes, he does.
And you indicated that it was okay with you to sign that pay voucher.
Just what?
You indicated that you signed that pay voucher?
I did sign that paper.
Testified at
That he
closing
signed,
examination
okay, that he signed it, yeah.
That you didn't think there was any problem with that?
I did not.
And why is that?
I trust Trident. I know him to be a good officer. I know him to be trustworthy. Excellent.
When you say Trident, you're talking about
Officer Villanueva.
Trident Villanueva.
Sorry.
Trident is just, that's okay, just
As a
for
practice.
purposes of the record.
As a practice, would you do any research to determine whether an officer who was giving you a pay voucher signed for overtime, would you do any background, any research to make a determination as to whether that officer worked that?
Any research into
Yeah,
it?
would you look into it at all? Call anybody, make any?
I never went so far as to call anybody, no.
You would
Just
just
the
accept his
officer at his word.
representation?
Yes, sir.
So it's a number of times, is that correct?
Correct.
Did you speak to defense counsel in advance of your testimony today?
I made one phone call to the defense secretary. Spoke to the secretary. I got subpoenaed by one of the defense attorneys. I apologize, fellas, I don't know which one.
I don't
Okay.
take responsibility, that's a big word.
Okay. And I called and spoke to the secretary. They asked for my availability for this. I told them I was going away at a certain point, as you were aware. And that was it. That was the phone call.
Okay.
So to answer his question, you did not speak with any of the defense attorneys?
No, to answer the question, no, none of the defense attorneys, just the staff.
Never had a
workers,
conversation?
office work. Never had a conversation.
And with respect to the D exhibit D85,
I don't think I have the,
back here.
According to at least the documents that have been attached to D85, there's a roster sheet for 425 that day?
Yes, there is.
Okay. And you were listed as a supervisor that day?
Pardon me, I was looking at the wrong sheet. I was looking at the
The
control
master
sheet.
was over
The
in
master was in the back.
He's also known as an officer.
Yes.
And once again, trying to bill and waiver who,
I'm
trying
sorry.
to bill and waiver who you say you know.
I do know.
Okay. Were you scheduled to supervise him that day?
According to this roster, yes, sir.
Okay. And was Sergeant Sullivan also working that day according to the roster?
Yes, sir, he was.
And you were asked some questions about Sullivan's patrol sheet, which is the page 2 of D85. There are actually notes. Sullivan actually made notes on his patrol sheet with respect to Lieutenant Chessel's activity that day.
Yes, he did make some notes here.
Now, could you describe for me the intersection at SIP and 109?
Describe it to you.
Yeah, what is the, describe the intersection?
It's a busy intersection. Sixth Avenue runs east and west, and Route 109 runs north and south. They intersect there. It's, I guess we call it a T intersection.
Okay, and what's on the corners?
Let's see.
So that there's, wait, just strike that, let me take it back. SIP Ave runs east and west,
Correct.
right? And then it tees at 109?
Correct.
So there's no through traffic?
No through traffic.
Okay. And so when you get there, traffic has to obviously, if you're heading west on to the T, you gotta make a right or a left.
Correct.
You know what's on the corners there?
Yes.
What's on the corners?
On the north corner is an auto auction. On the south corner is a little strip mall with the bagel joint, pizza joint, and liquor joint.
Okay, and with respect to your responsibilities, your understanding what you were required to do as a supervisor, what was your obligation with respect to locating officers on a particular post?
My obligation to go to the post and make sure the officers are there.
Okay, and on June 3rd of 2014, did you according to your paperwork, did you locate an officer on the corner of SIP and 109?
Yes, I did.
Now, you don't have any independent, who did you locate there?
Also both.
Now, do you have any recollection of seeing Officer O'Neill there at that particular time?
At that particular time I was there, no.
And according to, if you could just take a look at S8D. S8D. According to S8D, Michael O'Neill's pay voucher represents that he was at what location between 3 and 7?
I'm going to object to what it represents, Your Honor. What it says is what it says.
Just rephrase.
According to S8D, the pay voucher represents that Mike O'Neill was at what location between 3 and 7?
Objection, Your Honor. What it represents and what it says are two different things. If he wants to have a reading, have him read it, that's fine.
What does it say? I think that's what
No,
it
you
said.
said represents.
What, I said, what does the pay voucher represent with respect to where Michael O'Neill, the pay voucher, what does it represent with respect to where Michael O'Neill was between 3 and 7 on June 3rd?
Your Honor.
The objection is to state as to what does a pay voucher represent as to whether he was there or not. The pay voucher speaks for itself. It has the location. I don't know if
Okay, what time were you there on June the 3rd of 2014 according to your patrol sheet?
According to my patrol sheet, I was there at 4:20 hours.
And that was approximately right in the middle of that shift? Where was it? How many hours into the shift was it?
1 hour and 20 minutes into my shift.
1 hour and 20 minutes into the shift. And when you got there, according to your paperwork, you saw who?
Officer Bolt.
Okay. What was your practice? And so was it your obligation to locate the officers at those posts
Yes, sir.
as a supervisor?
Yes, sir.
What was your practice with respect to the scenario where you got to a two-man post and there was one officer on that post that you booked in? What would you do?
I'd ask, do you see anybody else? Anybody else working?
Now, you don't have
Along
a,
those lines, not a direct quote, obviously, but something along those lines.
you don't have a recollection of that particular day, is that correct?
No recollections.
But it was your obligation to locate the officers, correct?
Correct.
And you did indicate that you would speak to an officer about whether there was another officer there?
Correct.
Do you have any recollection of receiving any information about Michael O'Neill working on this particular post on that particular day?
No recollections.
Not from the officer who was working the post?
No recollections.
And you were asked on cross-examination by Mr. Sciarra whether the purpose of the DOT Skyway off-duty detail was to alleviate traffic or to be wedded to the paperwork. That was the question you were asked on. You remember asking?
I believe that was the question.
Okay. And your answer was the purpose of the DOT detail was to move traffic along.
Correct.
Well, what was the purpose of the paperwork? What was the purpose of the paperwork?
Purpose of the paperwork?
Yes, the purpose of the DOT detail was to move traffic along and not be wedded to the paperwork. There's plenty of paperwork, right?
For me, it was 2 sheets. It was,
So what's the
For that
purpose?
detail,
the purpose of the paperwork is put in a voucher so we can get paid.
And what was the purpose of your paperwork with respect to what you had to do to get paid?
I had to do a patrol sheet, make sure the officers were there, hand in my voucher with it.
And then what did you have to do with respect to the officers' pay vouchers that you were supervising?
I had to sign those pay vouchers.
And so what was the purpose of that?
So to verify that the officers were there.
Okay, and did you verify whether Michael O'Neill was there on that day?
Objection, Your Honor. All he's testified was that he verified, his sheet says what it says.
I'll withdraw it. I have no further questions.
Good. Very briefly on recross check. So, finish with June 3rd. Back to D84. Okay? Thank you. I asked you some questions about Villanueva. You were asked questions by others with regard to that. Just in terms of the paperwork and what it shows us and what it doesn't. So, D85, I apologize, that's the one I'm looking for. D85.
I have one here.
You have D85?
Oh, you have? Thank you. Yes, thank you. April 25th, the 85. The last 2 sheets are this detail, correct?
Correct.
Skyway Master. Model, the Master. Okay. And the, I'm struggling with the names, I
I
apologize.
screwed it up a couple
Yeah,
times too.
that's all right. It's got you as the supervisor that day, correct?
Correct.
And it's got Bove at 1 and 18th and Marin, correct?
Yes, it does.
Okay, and it's got Alvarado at 18th and Marin, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so, according to the paperwork, you would expect to see Bove and Alvarado at 18th and Marin, correct?
Correct.
And, according to the payrolls, Bove got paid for April 25th for 4 hours, and Alvarado got paid April 25th for 4 hours, correct?
Correct.
And so, according to paperwork, we would expect that you were the supervisor, they were the officers, you saw them there and you signed it, right?
Correct.
According to the paperwork. Let's go to the paperwork. Third page, Giovanni Bove. Off-duty pay voucher, did you sign that?
No, I did not.
You didn't. Again, that's for 1,500 to 1,900, right?
Yes, it is.
And according to the paperwork, Alvarado, Monique Alvarado, 1,500 to 1,900, correct?
Correct.
18th of Marriott, correct?
Correct.
Did you sign that?
No, I did not.
So according to the paperwork, some of the paperwork indicates we should expect to see you there, we should expect for them to be there, we should expect your signature there, correct?
Judge, I'm going to object to that question.
I withdraw. I withdraw. Just, everything seems to work out of paperwork except your signature's not there, correct?
Correct.
You're scheduled to be there, they're scheduled to be there, they got paid for being there, but there's no signature there, correct?
Correct.
And that wouldn't be part of your, you keep using the word procedure. There was no procedure, you just did the best you could, correct?
I wouldn't say there was no procedure. That's.
You did whatever you thought you could do, correct, to make this work? I withdraw it. It's not signed. These people got paid for work, the vouchers aren't even signed, correct?
Correct.
You got paid. You were scheduled to be there, they were scheduled to be there, correct?
Correct.
And my client's sitting here, he's on trial because of
Objection,
paperwork.
Judge.
Can you tell me why this paperwork doesn't match up?
I can't explain why.
Okay, thank you.
I have no questions. Nothing further.
Do you have any idea why they got paid for those days?
That
Without
does
your
not
signature?
be redirect. Okay. We have to cut this off some little bit. Okay, he's made it
So,
clear, he does not know.
I'm not
Okay.
permitted to ask him that question.
I think you've asked him already.
No, I never asked him, this is the first time, quite frankly, Judge, on cross-examination that Captain Brown was asked specifically with respect to the pay vouchers of Bove and Alvarado not being signed on that particular day. It's the first questions that were asked during the course of Captain Brown's testimony. If I can't redirect, if
All right.
you're saying I
Only
can't
with
redirect him
regards-
with respect to
no,
those, then
only with regards to that area. Go ahead.
do you have any idea how Bove and Alvarado got paid without your signature affixed to those pay vouchers?
I have no idea.
That's all I have.
Thank